Hello, I'm Darren again. Today's topic comes from a question asking about narcissistic malice. Now, previously, I've made videos where I discuss malignant narcissism. I also made a video looking at the vindictive nature of narcissism. And in both cases, I think it's fair to say we do see various degrees of malicious behaviour. But today, I'm going to outline just some of the differences as well as the similarities. I'll look at the motivations behind the malice and give some examples of how it can manifest. Because narcissism is often comorbid with other issues, I'll do it in the context of the dark tetrad. Along with the narcissism, we see psychopathy, which is being callous and lacking remorse. There is sadism, which is being cruel, and Machiavellianism, which is being manipulative. When these characteristics are combined, what we often see is someone who is sneaky and manipulative with a huge sense of entitlement. They believe they are superior and have no issue inflicting pain and misery on others for their own gratification. So if you find this topic to be interesting, please consider subscribing. So firstly, vindictiveness is usually motivated by a desire for revenge or retaliation in response to a perceived slight, betrayal, or injustice. People with strong narcissistic traits believe they deserve special treatment and can become quite vindictive when they feel they're not getting it. They can harbour resentment or bitterness and seek to inflict harm on those they believe have wronged them somehow. But it's an emotional reaction triggered by feelings of anger, resentment, or a desire for retribution in response to a perceived offence. With malignant narcissism, we see it comorbid with sociopathy, which, like psychopathy, comes under the umbrella term of antisocial personality. Malignant narcissists can be highly destructive in their personal relationships and can exploit others for their own gain without remorse. They also take pleasure in other people's pain and misery, whether they caused it or not. Now, malice, on the other hand, is a pervasive pattern of behaviour driven by an inflated sense of self-importance, a lack of empathy, and a desire for control and admiration. The malicious actions are often a means to assert or reassert dominance, maintain superiority, and protect their fragile ego. Because despite their outward bravado, narcissistic people often have a fragile self-esteem and can be hypersensitive to anything they consider to be criticism. Nor can they tolerate rejection or failure and can respond with malice whenever they're faced with setbacks or criticism. They want revenge or vindication against those they believe are responsible for their failures in an attempt to maintain their self-image and their domination. Now, sometimes it can manifest as narcissistic rage, which is a temper often out of proportion to the situation, and this can include physical or verbal assault, damage to property, false allegations. There can be insults, threats, passive-aggressive comments, sarcastic remarks, malicious gossip, even willful sabotage. But the malice doesn't always have to come out immediately. There can be an underlying simmering, internalized anger. It just simmers away until the hatred, the vitriol, can no longer be contained, and they explode. When it does come out, what we often see is emotional dysregulation. Due to their lack of empathy, narcissistic people often miss context and nuance, so can perceive unfairness or threat where there isn't any. They also struggle to understand or care about other people's feelings. And due to their lack of insight, narcissistic people know that they are hurting, but they don't necessarily know why it hurts or what the pain is. But they do believe the distress they feel justifies their actions. Everything is about how they feel and how they are perceived by others. So everything gets projected outwards as they try to reassert themselves over people and over situations. Now, the malice can be directed primarily at their intended target. For instance, if someone has caught them out in a lie, proved them wrong somehow, well, they have to regain some sense of superiority. But if they can't prove their point, well, they might threaten and intimidate until miraculously they're right again. If someone has succeeded where they have failed, well, they can react with contempt, outrage, and bitterness. And here we see the jealousy and the envy. Now, there may be times when they might not be able to direct their vitriol at their preferred target, the source of their displeasure. For instance, this could be a manager at work, a domineering parent, someone they see as more powerful than them. So they take their anger out on someone else, someone they see as an easier target. This is usually their partners, their kids, or people in junior positions in the workplace, or perhaps some poor shop assistant who can't read their mind. They feel they need someone to punish, someone to defeat, someone to terrorize, just to feel superior again. So they pick on those they consider to be weaker or someone who can't or won't fight back. So there can be something quite cowardly about it, and here we would see a subtype of sadism known as spineless sadism. But then there are those who go looking for a fight so that they can unleash the fury that is boiling within them. They want to be provoked. They want someone to do or say something that justifies their explosive vitriol. Now, when in that state of mind, there can be no reasoning with them. Someone standing up for themselves brings up further hatred and anger within them. They lash out even more. But someone backs down, tries to pacify or placate them. Well, this brings up contempt for their weakness, and they lash out more. In those moments, no amount of reasoning, placating, apologizing, or appeasement will suffice. Quite often, in that frame of mind, any sympathy, empathy, even validation, which they so desperately crave, makes them react worse because it reminds them of their humiliation and shame. Next, another aspect of the malicious behaviour can be manipulative. They can bully, insult, show their venom, but only in certain situations and with certain people, and usually when there's no one else around. Where there are witnesses present, they tend to be kind, pleasant, courteous, and decent, so no one believes the victim when they speak up. The use of malice is also a way of maintaining dominance over other people, especially those closest to them, their partners, their kids, other family members. Those closest to them feel like they're always having to tread carefully, never knowing what they might do or say that could trigger that wrath. It could be anything from not showing enough gratitude or praise for something, not being okay with unpleasant, unkind, rude behaviour. It could even be just having any kind of good news of their own. They learn to fear their temper. There could be fear over what kind of day they had, because if something didn't go their way, well, the partner knows they're going to bear the brunt of the cruelty. Next, narcissistic people tend to avoid taking responsibility for their actions. They tend to deflect blame onto others to justify their malicious behaviour. They gaslight their victims, manipulate situations to make others accountable for their actions. They try to make others responsible for their triggers. They blame others for provoking their malicious and abusive behaviour. Probably the most common phrase you'll ever hear is, "You made me do it." Now lastly, in some cases where they do go too far, a narcissistic person may offer some kind of a peace offering, a gift, a favour, even a promise never to do it again. It'll usually come with an excuse as well about all the terrible things that have happened to them, so it's not really their fault. Now, sometimes these promises could be delivered with a sarcastic smile, sometimes with crocodile tears. But in many cases, they're only words, and every time they're forgiven, they have learned what they can get away with. So to summarise, vindictiveness tends to be more focused primarily towards people or situations that are perceived as the source of an offence. The vindictiveness is usually some kind of quest for revenge. And narcissists do tend to have a long memory. When they perceive some kind of slight against them, they can harbour grudges for years, sometimes decades. Narcissistic malice is a consistent pattern of behaviour exhibited by people with very strong, deeply ingrained narcissistic traits. It can manifest in various relationships and situations as a means of asserting dominance, manipulating others, or protecting their self-image. It can manifest as an immediate and intense explosion of insults, threats, verbal or physical attacks. But it can also be controlled and calculated to keep others in a state of uncertainty and terror. They can confuse their victims by turning it off and on whenever it suits. A burst of outrage followed by an act of kindness. A tender hug and a kiss with a degrading, humiliating insult whispered in the ear. And the responses they get from their victims fuel their sense of dominance and superiority. And when they do feel wronged, cheated, invalidated, but can't direct their fury at those they hold responsible, they'll take it out on someone else, anyone else, and it's usually someone they see as less powerful than they are. And sadly, in many cases, it is the innocent, people who had nothing to do with it. It's those closest to them, those who actually care about them. So that's a brief outline of narcissistic malice. As always, if there's anything I've missed, please feel free to add it in the comments section, or some interesting conversations start from these videos. But if you find this topic to be interesting, please consider subscribing, and until next time, thanks for watching.